Capture the passion.
Welcome back to CPTP, Season 3, Episode 6. Today we have a very special guest, Melissa Alvarez-Mejorado. She's one of our mentees here in Rio Hondo from the Mentor Program. And we're going to talk about mentorship and how it has helped her throughout her career. She continues her journey. Melissa, tell us about yourself.
Hi, my name is Melissa, and I am a returning student here to Rio Hondo College after some time away. So I worked on my bachelor's at Cal State LA in psychology, and then I worked on my master's in gerontology, which is the study of aging. And so I kind of like to see myself as the whole process,
Right.
not just the whole child, but the whole being, So I'm a returning student here working on my ECE credential, looking to transfer over to Cal State LA for my multiple subject credential. And so, as I mentioned, being a returning student, I took some time off once my kids were born, and then realized that I wanted to be doing things with kids. I just love the energy that they bring, and it really kind of just changed my mind after I had my kids, where my heart and my focus was. Originally, I wanted to work with kids, and it just kind of brought me back to where I wanted to be.
So you have a master's degree. You took a certain path in your journey in education, and you had children, and it changed your perspective into your career path. And now you're back wanting to be in the preschool setting.
For sure.
So what do you think is going to be a challenge for you as you go from psychology? Psychology is very closely related to what we study in early childhood education. But what do you think might be some challenges for you as you go into the field of early childhood education?
Definitely the challenges I foresee for myself is my lack of experience, other than being a parent and doing volunteer stuff with the kiddos. Really my lack of experience. And so, I have a full-time job,
Right.
and I work at a college, but it's not related to ECE. And so I see that as my biggest deficit to getting started. And then just, for me, I'm a little nervous about all of it,
Right.
I mean, I'm doing my practicum hours right now, and so I see the kiddos and I see how they respond. But taking the helm and being the lead teacher makes me a little nervous.
Yeah,
So.
of course. In other episodes throughout the season, we've brought in one of the professors from East LA College that talks about practicum. So we know how demanding that is. You have to fulfill a certain amount of hours at the same time doing your other classes, and like yourself, you have a full-time job, you have a family at home. It gets really complex, and at times I can imagine you sort of feel defeated, but you have people supporting you, right? Like your mentor. You are a mentee for our program CPTP here at Rio Hondo. What advice has your mentor given you that you feel like, you know what, it's completely worth it, let me keep pushing forward?
So, like you said, I am, and I wouldn't be able to do this without the support of my family, my friends. I mean, I really have an extended network, grandparents. I mean, people that help watch the kids in the evening while I'm taking classes here, because I'm here on Tuesdays from 7 to 9 o'clock. And so,
Wow.
it's tough.
Wow.
But like you mentioned, I wouldn't be able to do it without the mentorship, without the network. I was talking previously, and I mentioned that even just being in the program has really helped me to stay focused.
Right.
I think it would have been a little easier for me to take a step back and maybe take some time off, but knowing that I have the support from everybody,
Yes,
and just even when they check in with me, how are you doing, how are your classes going, really helps me to just kind of stay in it, stay grounded, and to really focus my attention back to where I need to be. My mentor has been great, and though I haven't been able to spend as much time with her this semester as I did in previous semesters because of the practicum requirements, she really is great. She's just been so very easygoing. I just enjoy watching her interactions with the children.
Right.
So she's a kindergarten teacher. I enjoy watching her interactions, her command of the class, but still being because the little ones definitely have that. They want that nurturing, so she has that. So I see a lot of myself in her, but also what I would like to be like as a teacher.
Right.
And she's just great in terms of, any questions I have. She's always giving me, responses. And if she doesn't know the answer, she lets me know. She'll get back to me. And, she's brought me into some of the trainings and stuff that they've gone to to kind of see the different aspects of teaching in terms of like curriculum, in terms of grading, things like that. So even though we're getting knowledge in our classrooms, we're not seeing some of the behind the scenes logistics.
You're getting first-hand experience from your mentor. And it's one of the benefits of having a mentor, especially in a field that you're going to go into. You have someone that already has the experience, that has gone through that journey. So it's able to provide you with some level of expertise to help your path, not necessarily easier, but just give you, like you said, a behind-the-scenes look of what goes on. You brought up something very important, and in another episode we're going to talk about this, is the importance of having a support system with their family. Yes. I think a lot of times we feel that a mentor needs to have that title so we can seek that guidance. But family can be that support, or even the mentorship as well. So let's talk about your family. How has your family supported you and to help you continue with this journey as you're a returning student now?
So my family's been super supportive, like I said, and I always make sure to thank them because, again, I wouldn't be able to do it without them. And I mean, my parents, my sisters, my in-laws, neighbors, everybody. I really feel just even the simple check-ins with people sometimes, because I think we struggle and we try, especially as parents or, working adults, we really try to keep it together. But, there's so much going on underneath. And so just a check-in, simply just to let, people know that you're caring for them, that you're checking in, has really made a difference. So I'm fortunate to have, again, a great family support network. My mother-in-law was a teacher in elementary, and so she's a great support and a great resource of what to do and not to do. And while we don't always see eye to eye because our personalities are different, she is wonderful in just her demeanor with the kids and me being able to watch her, with the kids, with my kids, her grandkids. And of course that dynamic's different. Yeah. But just, I try to be very responsive and, I observe everything that goes on because there's so much background that goes on that we can learn from.
Yes, of course. And, as a preschool teacher, let me tell you, sometimes you can be as prepared as you want, and you can think, I have all the knowledge, I got all these great experiences, I have a perfect lesson plan, and you walk in and it's like, oops, this isn't going to work today. To be able to be flexible with a lot of different things that go on, like we talked earlier, life happens sometimes that we have to be flexible, and having that support system really helps us, like you said, keeps us grounded to be able to continue to persevere and push forward to be able to continue with our journey. Let's talk more about your mentor here at Rio Hondo. You've had the opportunity to visit her class. You've had the opportunity to do some trainings, workshops, conferences, and what have you. What do you think has been the most beneficial thing about having a mentor for you?
Just being able to kind of pick her brain and ask questions, really. Because at the end of the day, we all will have some knowledge base. Right. We're coming in with a required number of courses, classes, hours in practicum, volunteer hours, whatever it is. But to be able to just really get her experience, good and bad, and everybody's experience is different, but you can use that to grow from. And then just to, like I said, to watch her. And so when she started teaching, I think she started teaching it was either the year before COVID or the COVID year. Okay. And so to see her experience as a teacher and how it's different than maybe some seasoned teachers who have been teaching for, 20 plus years, like my mother-in-law who just retired 2 years ago. Okay. Just the experiences that they have and that she's been able to share. And so, to be able to be, like you mentioned earlier, flexible and to be able to pivot and to really change the way that they taught, and then coming back and dealing with the issues, the behavior issues, and, some of the things that, the teachers are dealing with post-COVID. and then solutions that they've tried, successful and not successful, but to be able to see those things in her inspire me and, give me ideas of what I want to take to my classroom. So
Definitely. So do you have a preferred grade level that you want to work with?
I love the littles. When I drive down the hill and I hear them laughing, it warms my heart. It really does.
A while ago.
Well, that was a little different. But yes, for sure. And so my target grade would be probably TK through 3, I think would be my ideal grade. But again, that might change when I get in there and, So.
And again, having that flexibility. As you get ready for this career path, talk about your experience as a student to be able to have completed an undergraduate, then a graduate degree, and now coming back saying, well, you know what, this isn't for me. I know many times for us in life, we sort of feel like if we have this goal in mind and we start into it, and in many cases, it's like, well, I've invested so much time, I've invested so much money, I'm just going to go through it and, just make the best of it, sort of salvage their career. What was it that you said, you know what, I'm ready for a different path?
So actually, I kind of feel like it's a little bit of a homecoming for me in terms of working with kids. Yeah. So, when we're in high school or, even younger, we have this vision of what we expect our lives to look like. I wanted to be a pediatrician. And so I always wanted to work with kids. But then, as life happens, as we grow and, we take a class. And so really, when I was at Cal State LA doing my undergrad in psychology, I took a minor in social gerontology. I took an instructor, and sometimes that's really all it is an instructor who just has the passion. And that was what it was for me. She had the passion. She just was engaging. And I, set me on fire. And so I, finished my minor in social gerontology. Then I took gerontology courses over at Cal State Fullerton, where I received my master's degree. And was excited about it because obviously we know that the population is aging and there's definitely a need for people in that field. But the dynamic was different. And so I still love that population, but my heart has always been with the littles. And so I found myself, when I was doing projects, it would be, how do we bring the little ones in to the older ones and like therapy type of thing. I really was, those were the projects and research that I found always interesting to me. And so after I had my kids, so I have a 10-year-old and a 4-year-old, 2 boys. I had to go back to work right away, 6 weeks after my 10-year-old. So we, vetted all of these daycares and in-home options. We found one that we thought we really liked, and we were happy there. And, she had, less than 8 kids or whatever it was, what the requirement was. I don't remember at the time. And we picked him up one day, and he had an injury on his head. Yes. And so as a new mom, of course, I completely freaked out. Yes. And, he was a preemie too, so it was all kinds of... So we took him to the doctor. They said he was okay. But so that changed me too. I just thought, even though I thought I was happy with the care he was receiving, it turns out I wasn't. And I think that kind of ignited the switch in me where I wanted to, I wanted to go back and be a better parent. But I also wanted to provide, better opportunities. And really, I think that our little ones are the foundation of where we're going to be. And so they need our support and our guidance and our love. And so, anyway, that's kind of what brought me back. And
you're prompting a lot of thoughts that takes us back to this season. Season 1, we interviewed Dr. Judy Cross. She's a executive director at Pacific Oaks Children's School, and she talked about the importance of early childhood education. She talks a lot about the foundation. This is the foundation for society. And being in the field of early childhood education for 23 years now, I've developed that to be my passion, to working with children and to say if we're not happy with society, then we need to do something to change it to be able to have a better outcome. Um, let's go back to what you were mentioning about what brought you back. You talked about there was a professor that you connected with, which again goes back to the importance of teachers at any level. The important role that we take to be able to inspire, to be able to motivate, to be able to say, hey, you know what? You guys have a different path, which essentially it's like a mentor, right? So now that you're a mentee right now, do you see yourself possibly being a mentor?
I would hope so, and even if I don't have the mentor title, I hope so. I mean, that's really what I want to be for my students, for my kids. You know,
Right.
at the end of the day, I hear you're saying how we can affect change. You know, be the change you want to see, of course. But really, it really boils down to being a great role model. And like you said, we see that from the amazing teachers that we've worked with in our past, whether it be in elementary, because I remember my kindergarten teacher. I mean, so I do.
Yeah,
and so
awesome.
If it's kindergarten or if it's high school or college or a counselor, I mean, I'm fortunate to work in education now. I work in the career tech ed department or division here. And just to see the great work that our faculty do, our counselors, Leah as a coordinator. I mean, I see passion in a lot of those people.
Definitely.
And it inspires me. And that's what I want to be. I want to be the inspiration. I want to be the motivation. I want to be the one that gets the kid over the hump, whatever that hump is. So,
and let's keep going with that conversation. It just takes one connection for someone to say, wow, that means a lot. You remember your kindergarten teacher. I think back to why I wanted to get into the education field, and unfortunately, I had a horrendous experience. I went to LA Unified as a student, and I continued to think back into, man, what was I doing? Like, where were my parents? Why were my parents advocating for something different? Why weren't they saying, you know what, we're going to go and not start a revolution, but just question it? But then I think back to my immigration status, and my families at that time, we weren't documented. So it was like, my dad would say, just don't don't ruffle any feathers, just under the radar. And I think to me, that was the beginning of saying, you know what, this is what's going to take to change, and I'm going to be part of that change. Yesterday was the last meeting that I had with my Cal State LA students, and there was a couple of them that stand out. Two of them came to me. One of them, a gentleman, was in tears, and he said, "Thank you." And there I am fighting back all my tears and thinking, as that conversation went on, he was saying that he connected a lot. He said, I've taken a lot of classes, and I feel that it was just, okay, just get these things done. He said, with you, I sort of felt like I need to get better. The conversation, the assignments, the reflections, the discussions, he said, everything just made me feel like if I can actually do something. What I'm getting at is that sometimes as rewarding as it feels for me hearing that, it's also kind of frustrating because what are the others doing, or what are they not doing? How do we see education? What do we think education looks like? In your perspective, what do you want to do with that powerful role as a teacher when you get into the classroom? What do you think part of that responsibility is? Not just the education of children, but the overall role as a teacher. What do you see yourself doing?
Well, I think that's a great question, and that's a difficult question to answer. But at the end of the day, I think it goes back to especially what you're saying. That responsibility, and to me, I look at it as students are going to learn. Whether or not we're, providing the extra supports, whether it's they're on a video on YouTube watching how to do, they're going to learn. They're going to find a way to learn. I think our biggest impact is helping them to develop, their person, their emotions, all of that. That's what I want to do. that's where I see my calling. It is about the learning, of course, but it's about the development. It's the growth. It's all of that. And I think, how you were saying, sometimes just the connection. And it can be as easy as, because we don't know, I think I mentioned or I alluded to it earlier, what anybody brings to the table, what kind of day they're having, what loss they've, dealt with that day, especially because of COVID. We've seen if they've eaten, breakfast. I mean, we don't know. And I think we're so quick sometimes to just, get frustrated. And I want the one thing that I will say, especially being involved in this program, just really helps because I've heard it in, the conferences that we've had or the videos that we've had or, the workshops, the teachers, the mentors, everybody. Just being able to really make the connection, to take the time to, hey, how's it going? How you doing? Do you need some help? I mean, all of that to me is the really helping. I look at it as the soul to develop. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
So that's really where I see myself. I see my calling. I see my guiding is, of course, I want them to learn the skills, the knowledge,
right.
but it's about the mastery and having a soul, being kind to one another.
Oh,
I mean, I don't know.
You're absolutely right.
And
I love that answer because I think that through my experience, what I've learned is that as teachers, we have a lot of pressure.
For sure.
We have to get prepared for state testing, which we were talking about. We have to prepare them for the next grade level.
Yes.
We have to do expectations that society wants us to get done. Then we have administration that wants things to get done.
The parents
want certain things done.
Yeah.
And it becomes very overwhelming and many times. But I love what you said about developing the soul. And it's about connections. I want you to think about this. Think about a time that you were in any class, at any grade level, and you just didn't have that connection with the teacher. How was learning impacted? Versus another time where you felt this strong connection to the teacher. How was learning impacted?
So like I said earlier, I remember my kindergarten teacher. She was wonderful. She did these hands-on experiences. She made us feel like family. It was just such a warm and welcoming experience. And not every teacher has to have that, for sure. Because I've had high school experiences, teachers, so I went to a Catholic high school where the nuns were a little strict. And maybe not as warm and fuzzy, but still I had good experiences because, they really were there helping to lift up and to guide. Versus, not having that, and so, the warm and fuzzy is more me and my personality. But at the end of the day, we talked about, the connections that we're making. I think that's really what I want to be able to, again, like I said, bring to the table. Working here in Career Tech Ed and being part of some of the advisory committee meetings I've sat on before. And I'm hearing about the foundational skills that are lacking. That seems to be the big thing.
Yeah.
And so when we talked about foundation, I see my purpose as helping to set a great foundation for us to all learn and grow from.
Right. Yeah. And that's very critical in the learning of it. That's important in acquiring the new knowledge. And as teachers, that's what we do. We provide meaningful knowledge to them so they can build on it. What do you want to get out of the mentor program? I know we're heading towards the end of the semester, but in the next couple of weeks, what do you want to take advantage of, knowing that you have a mentor that's in the field?
Just in terms of my mentor, and I'm fortunate because I have my mentor, but I also feel like I have all of these other mentors, people, and I think it's all in the way we receive the information, right? So we could have a teacher that might not be, the same personality or same mindset we are, and so that can turn us off or maybe but I look at it as everything's a learning experience. Yeah. You either learn how you want to be or maybe how you don't want to be. And so I think if we just kind of sometimes flip our mindset and look at things that way. And so I've been fortunate to, with my mentor, to be able to just, whenever I reach out to her, she's super responsive, like I mentioned earlier, if she doesn't know, she said she'll check in with her admin and get back to me. And that's what I want to be. And I think, in terms of mentor and teaching, we don't always have the answers.
Right.
But I think it's so important for us as mentees, for us as teachers, to be able to see, okay, they're not always going to have the answer, but they're going to try their best to get it for us. They're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And so I think I try really hard with my kids too. When I make a mistake, I own it. We're not perfect, but I'm going to keep trying, and I'm going to try to help you so that we can, learn from this mistake together. And that's really, at the end of the day, to be able to learn from their experiences. And like I said, either take something. Everything's a takeaway. You just decide maybe if it's a positive thing that you want to use, or maybe that's something that you don't want to use because that's not your style. So,
a very important point there that you bring up is that you've also learned what not to do. And I think a lot of the times we sort of feel that learning always needs to be the right thing. Learning what not to do, it's important because it's okay for us to make mistakes. And it's okay for us to also understand that children are going to make mistakes in the classroom. And that's one of the things that I push on my younger students is it's okay to make a mistake. And you bombed an assignment, that's fine. Now you know what you shouldn't do. Did you procrastinate? Oh, you did. Okay, well, this is the outcome of procrastination. Now you know how you go about your next assignment. What do you think has been one of the things that you've learned throughout your journey in your career that you're not going to repeat going into your new journey as a teacher?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'd like to say that I have learned to give myself a little bit more grace. But at the end of the day, I think we all strive for success, for a little bit of perfection, and standards, which of course our teachers, our coworkers, our family hold us accountable to a certain level of standards. And so, my son, he's struggling a little bit right now in terms of sports with like some mental blocks. And so we're trying to work with him through some of those things. And I feel a lot of it has to do with our personality and just, like I said, being graceful, acknowledging that it's okay to make mistakes, and that we learn from them. Like I said, everything that we do is an experience to learn from, good or bad. But if you don't take that chance, then you're never going to learn from it, because you're not doing.
Exactly.
And so that's kind of what I see is just to be more graceful. And again, my big thing is I'm going to make mistakes, but I need to show the kids, show whoever it is that we make mistakes. It's okay. We move on and we grow from them. And that will help, hopefully, for them to be a little bit more accepting of themselves, a little bit more graceful with themselves and with others. And again, that's, we're building that soul. We're building that capacity for kindness for ourselves and for each other.
What you're prompting me into thinking is success is not linear. One of our other guests, Victor Soto, he's going to be the executive director at Pacifico Children's School, one of my mentors. And I met him about 20-some years ago. We had a very deep conversation, and that sort of like helped me see a totally different path just by a conversation. And he said it, sometimes we think that success is linear. And by this time, I need to have accomplished this. By that time, that's the next accomplishment, without giving ourselves that grace and to saying, well, you know what? I did that didn't work, or I can change my mind, and that's okay. Or I made a mistake, and it's not the end of the world. It's okay. I can always go back and learn. It's something very important, and I love how you're not only thinking about that in your career, but also with your children. I'm curious to know what message do you push on your own children at home based on your experience?
Well, I try to be a positive role model, and don't get me wrong, I have my days where I am like every other crazy parent out there. blowing up and pulling my hair out and, driving by the house thinking, do I really want to drive in the driveway or should I just keep going? But, at the end of the day, so I'm an older student, obviously. And so to me, really just providing that great role model. I see it as, like the little one, and then now there's 2, and now there's 4, and now there's 6. I'm hoping that that's what I do for my kids. My kids see me in the evenings on the weekends doing homework, and they ask questions, and so for me to show them that, and to show them that it's okay, like you said, it's not a linear thing, and so I thought I was going to do this, and maybe I changed my mind. Now I'm back at it, and I'm not giving up. I've got the perseverance, and maybe I'll be 70 by the time I'm teaching. I mean, all jokes aside, but that they, whatever they put their mind to, they can accomplish as long as they have the determination, they've got the network, and it doesn't have to be family. I mean, whoever it is, your friend, your neighbor, your teacher, just to have those supports and to really believe in yourself. It's not going to be easy, for sure. But anything worth having is worth fighting for, and so.
Definitely, I really admire the fact that you're still chasing your dream. And I think it's important for our audience to understand that, again, success is not linear, and it's okay to do something and then be able to come back and, hey, you know what, I think I'm going to take a different route. I admire you for that. I think it's important for us to understand that we don't need to be 24 with a credential in teaching. We can be later in our lives and to say, you know what, I think I'm ready for teaching now, because teaching is hard. Teaching is very hard. And recently, with coming out of the pandemic, we've had a lot of teacher shortage.
Yes.
A lot of teachers have been feeling burnt out. A lot of teachers have just been questioning whether or not they've been effective. Through a lot of teachers that I've spoken to, a lot of them just say, I'm just tired. We talked about salaries. We talked about benefits. We talked about just how much more teaching needs to be appreciated by society, by our government, and to giving us an opportunity to make a good living and still provide that high quality of education. So as we know, teaching is hard. Why did you decide it, aside from you wanting always to work with children, but what is it about teaching that's drawing you back now into saying, I have a master's degree, I have an undergraduate degree, but I still want to go back to teach. What is it?
So I think at the end of the day, my kids are really a driving force. They make me want to be a better person, for sure. And so, number one, my kids and my family push me towards that. But also being able to work here at the college, I work kind of in a background, and so my impact on students is more of an indirect impact. While it's still important because we provide services that help students succeed, I really want to have more of a direct impact. I feel like it's hard to be passionate about, paperwork and requisitions in the background.
Yeah.
While those are important things, I think my passion would be better served to providing a direct impact to students, and that's
where you're at.
yes.
and that's amazing that we as teachers, again, we have to understand that it's not just about going into the classroom and working with children and teaching them. There's a lot of things that go behind the scenes. I was just talking with somebody from the office. I asked her, I said, when is the semester over? And she said, oh, it's over at the end of the month. And I said, oh, how exciting. She said, means nothing to me. I still got to come back on Monday.
Yes.
and I said to her, I said, it's interesting that a lot of the times I think society doesn't realize, like you said, behind the scenes work. Our summers are not just kicking back and doing absolutely nothing. Our summers is prepping, reflecting, and getting things ready into, okay, how am I going to be a better teacher next school year? And all that behind the work is taking place. That can be exhausting.
Yes.
And again, understanding that we're not compensated for that time. And teacher burnout, that has a lot to do with it, to the conversations that I've had with teachers, because it's like, I have no time when I'm in the classroom because I'm teaching, but yet paperwork and everything else that needs to get done, it's not there. Not trying to discourage anyone to go into the teaching field, but that's the reality. The reality of it. Have you spoken to teachers aside from your mentors that you feel like, yeah, I still want to be there. I still want to teach because it's so rewarding.
For sure. Every day, so I mentioned, my mother-in-law was a teacher in early elementary, and my sister-in-law, future sister-in-law, she's right now, this is her first year teaching, and she's teaching 5th grade. And so she's had some struggles, definitely, with the students, with the admin, just, in general. But then I've also had teachers who were, some of my most favorite teachers in college were, teaching psychology or teaching, I can't remember what the title of the class is, but it's like the teaching course where you have to do your hours of in teaching as well.
The practicum.
Well, it's not the practicum. It's like the intro to teaching.
Okay.
So I had to do intro to teaching, and we had to do practicum hours, but it wasn't practicum, but similar. And they were kindergarten teachers, but they were also college teachers, and I kind of liked how they, obviously as teachers, as parents, as family members, as coworkers, we wear multiple hats. And so just to kind of be able to see that, I've had some great and not so great. I've shadowed some teachers where like I said, I learned that was not who I wanted to be. And at the end of the day, and this is me and my personal belief, but I think it all really comes down to passion. So find your passion, and whatever it is, whether it's your behind the scenes paperwork and you're good at it and you're passionate about it, then that's for you. If you're passionate about helping children develop and learn and play and make mistakes, then that's, for you. If you get in and you realize maybe I need to work with older kids because, but to find your passion and to just because you go in and you realize you don't like it, that doesn't mean that ends there for you. There are so many avenues, I think, especially in early childhood education. So you're not just limited to teaching. I mean, the sky's the limit, really. There's so many opportunities out there, whether or not you want to work with kids in the medical field or, in-home visits or as a, you're going in and you're, I'm losing my train of thought here. You're going in and you're supervising or you're doing observations for how a classroom is set up or how a school is set up. I mean, there's so many opportunities. So I think kind of like you mentioned in terms of success and how your path doesn't need to be linear. Once you get in, that doesn't need to stay there either. Right. Maybe you get the experience and you're teaching here and you realize you want to go to a different grade or you want to go up through admin. And of course, we were talking earlier about the need for more diverse administration. I mean, the sky's the limit, really. So just, again, I think find your passion and run with it. That's, my big takeaway or giveaway.
Have you ever considered teaching at the higher ed level?
I have. And so, I've thought about, kind of like I mentioned, some of my, most favorite college teachers were also kindergarten teachers. And, it seems kind of such a different population. But, when you look at it, I think maybe not so much. I think that's kind of why I have the love for the kids and for the older adults. It's not that different, when we look at it, it's not that different. And again, I think it goes back to if we set the kids up with a great solid foundation, then we can hope to see this wonderful adult population that has all of these great traits and characteristics that we help to establish in the littles.
Oh yeah, definitely. One of my other mentors, Manuel Caldera, he was in here season 2, episode 2, and we talked about leadership. And I remember him telling me one of my first conversations with him. He said, "Working with adults is like working with children." And I asked him, I said, "How so?" And he goes, "Well, children want to be accepted, so do adults. Children want to be heard, so do adults. Children want to learn, and so do adults." He said, if you can master the art of teaching children, he goes, you pretty much mastered the art of
Yeah.
teaching at any level, and it sort of comes full circle for us to those of us that teach at the higher ed and also work with young children, because working with young children, that's the research. And then when you go into the college and you're talking and you're referencing research, then you plug it into I have actually tried that in the classroom with the young children, and it actually works.
Yes.
So that's another path that anyone going into the teaching profession that you might want to consider doing. Yeah, there's a lot of behind the works in that field as too, but it's something that's also rewarding, because I feel that once you become a mentor, you're a mentor for life.
Yeah.
And you sort of feel this urge of wanting to give back, especially if they are asking for it and they are seeking it, then it's very rewarding to be able to have conversations with students that are asking you a million questions and they're picking your brain, because those are the ones that want to go out there and change the world. What has been one of your questions that you hear yourself asking different people over and over, where you're like, okay, I get what you're saying, but let me ask someone else for someone else's different perspective?
I think, again, I think a big deficit for me is my lack of experience. And so, we mentioned earlier about salaries, and, I struggle a little bit with leaving my full-time job to go and work in the field that I'm most passionate about, but to take a pay cut. And so, that struggle is real, because I have, a family and I have responsibilities that way.
Right.
But so I think the questions that I kind of keep asking, are just, what works and what doesn't, and how did you find that, or, what did you do to get there? And so, I mean, of course, I'm going to have to make my own, trial and error for sure. But if I can get a little bit of, maybe a step up, so I'm only making, 3 errors instead of 7. But just to really hear their experiences, and again, just to kind of see, in my perspective, with what my personality can do and not do, and what will work for me. Case in point, my husband and I are very different personalities. I'm a little bit more soft, and he's a little, and of course he was a sports guy, so he's got that kind of sports rough mentality. But I think we work well together. We balance each other out. Yeah, for sure. And so sometimes I find that I feel like I'm going to struggle with maybe classroom management, because I'm a little bit, okay. So to be able to see those stronger teachers and how they take hold of their classroom and how they manage their classroom and what works and what doesn't. And of course, we're going to find that what works this year might not work next year, because we have a whole new group of students with a whole group of, issues, a whole new group of issues. But again, just to remind ourselves to be graceful and to know that, flexibility is a real thing. We adapt and we change, and we change midstream. And something that's working today might not work tomorrow. But just to be able to, to understand that and to not get so caught up in, like you said, this was the lesson plan I had. Well, it's out the window now, because everybody came in here today. It's the day after Halloween and they had sugar. I mean, we have to work with those things. And so just a flexibility and to kind of, again, just... I really try to, when I'm in the classroom, observe to see, what works and what doesn't, and then adapt it for myself.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very important for us to put things in perspective a lot. And one of the things that I've learned throughout my career is never work in isolation. As a teacher, sometimes we invest so much in our classroom, in that environment, that we feel like, this is my 4 walls and I'm going to stay here. One of the success that I found throughout my career, and I share, is continue building your network. Don't feel that the classroom is your limit. That's one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen teachers make is, I just need to make my classroom better. Yeah, okay, I get that, but also, if you're not talking to other people to hear their perspective into what works or what doesn't work, just like you mentioned, how are you going to get better? If you don't have that mentorship, that network that you talked about, how are you going to get better? It's very important for us to know how to collaborate with other people. Very important for us to be able to be receptive to other people's perspectives.
Yeah.
One of the advice that I always tell my students is reach out, ask people, ask other professionals, pick their brains and find a way that you can benefit from their mistakes so you don't repeat that mistake, so then you can get better in your craft. I'm curious to know, as you're about to, you also mentioned, let's touch on that real quick, you want to transfer, right?
Yes.
Go to your
Cal State LA.
Cal State LA, and work on your credentials to be able to start your new journey. What would be something that you would advise our audience out there that are seeking the teaching field? What advice can you give them based on your journey that you have gone through so far?
I think the advice that I would provide, and it goes back to what you were just saying, is to develop a strong network. And networks can look so different now. There's so many opportunities and options for us out there than there were 10, 20 years ago. And so in some of the classes that I've taken, simple things that they've talked about in terms of, if you don't have a personal network that you can engage with, there's so many options out there in terms of like social network. You can get on the different social media apps and find a teacher maybe that you like their style, and you can pull things from. There's so many, and not everything is great, we know that, but that's with life. We have to vet it and see what the positive. We have to look for the positive and the negative and use it to help us benefit and to help us be successful. And so sometimes it's difficult for me to engage face to face because I'm an introvert, and so I have a hard time, going up to somebody that I don't know and trying to pick their brain. But the element of social media has made it a little easier because I can go on and once I have my network or my group, it's a lot easier for me. But it's sometimes just taking that step. And again, we had talked earlier. You never know if you don't try. Right. And so sometimes you just have to put yourself out there and try to make that connection, whether it's personal or find a teacher out there, on, YouTube or TikTok or Pinterest or whatever, something that relates to, something that you, like you had said earlier, that you connect with and use it. And then, you are also more responsive to what doesn't work for you, what isn't your style. So I would just say, again, to trust yourself and to be passionate, whatever it is that you do. And if you get into a situation, like you said, where you find that maybe this isn't for me, then, again, we talked about the flexibility and being able to pivot. Yeah. And there are just so many opportunities out there. And to have that group of people that you can talk to and just kind of flush out a conversation. Hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? And they might not know, but they might know somebody who does know. Right. It's all kind of 6 degrees for sure. Yeah. For sure. So that's my, I guess my takeaway is just to trust yourself, to look for support in any way. There's not a right or wrong way for supports. Right. Exactly. So whatever works for you, use it and, go with it.
Yeah. So. Great conversation with you. Thank you so much for your time. You're going to be very successful. There's no doubt about that. Really admire everything that you've gone through and everything that you're going to go through to be successful. Mm-hmm. You sound like a very passionate person. We can't wait to see you be successful. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you at the next one.
Capture the passion.